Hello, RCK. It's Pastor Rich. I miss you guys so much. I can't wait till we can get together again and high five and I give you a big hug and sing happy birthday to you. But until then, we have this video and I want to read you a story about a brother and a sister. How many of you have a sibling? You've got a brother, you got a sister? Anybody? Older brother, older sister? How about younger? Anybody got a younger brother, younger sister? Yeah, I've got a younger sister and we have a close relationship. She lives all the way in Texas, way down south. But today's story is not about me and my sister. It's about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his older sister. Now, this story is pretty important to me because I got to meet Dr. King's sister. Her name is Christine. She was actually one of my professors at college. And a professor is basically a teacher at university or college. So if you got a teacher, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But she wasn't born that way, and she had to grow and go to university and all that good stuff. But this is about Martin and his sister Christine. The book title is called My Brother Martin. And since we have MLK week this week, I wanted to read this story to you. All right, let's turn the page. And there is his sister, much older, Miss Christine. And she says, "Gather around and listen as I share childhood memories of my brother, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I am his older sister, and I've known him longer than anyone else. I knew him long before the speeches he gave, and the marches he led, and the prizes he won. I even knew him before he first dreamed the dream that would change the world. We were born in the same room, my brother Martin and I. I was an early baby, born sooner than expected. Mother dear and Daddy placed me in the chiffon robe drawer that stood in the corner of the upstairs bedroom. I got a crib a few days afterwards. A year and a half later, Martin spent his first night in that same hand-me-down crib in the very same room. The house where we were born belonged to Mother dear's parents, our grandparents, the Reverend and Mrs. A.D. Williams. We lived there with them, with our Aunt Ida, our grandmother's sister." Look at all the people in that house. This is Christine, and that's little Martin. Not long after my brother Martin, who we called ML, because he and Daddy had the same name, our baby brother was born. His name was Alfred, but we called him AD for Alfred Daniel. They called me Christine. Like 3 peas in one pod, we grew together. Our days and rooms were filled with adventure stories and tinker toys, dolls and Monopoly and Chinese checkers. And although Daddy, who was an important minister, and Mother dear, who was known far and wide as a musician, often worked and took them away from our home, our grandmother was always there to take care of us. I remember days sitting at her feet as she and Ida filled us with grand memories of their childhood and read to us about all the wonderful places in the world. Look at that. Grandma. And of course, my brother and I had each other. We 3 stuck together like pages in a brand new book. And being normal young children, we were almost always up to something. Our best prank involved a fur piece that belonged to our grandmother. It almost looked alive, with its tiny feet and little head and gleaming eyeglasses. So every once in a while, in the waning light of evening, we'd tie that fur piece to a stick and hide behind the hedge in front of our house. And we would dangle it in front of an unsuspecting passerby. Boy, you could hear the screams of fright all across the neighborhood. Playing games. Anybody like to play games with their brother and sister? Teasing mom and dad? Then there was the time Mother Dear decided that her children should all learn to play piano. I didn't mind too much, but ML and AD preferred to be outside to being stuck inside with a piano teacher, Miss Ma'am, who would rap your knuckles with a ruler just for playing the wrong notes. Well, one morning, ML and AD decided to loosen their legs on the piano bench so no one would have to practice. We didn't tell Mr. Man, and when he sat down, crash, he went. They took the legs out. Oh my goodness, playing pranks. But mostly, we were good and obedient children. ML did learn to play a few songs on the piano. He even went off to sing with our mother once or twice. Given his love for singing and music, I'm sure he could have become as good a musician as our mother had in her life had not God called him to a different path. But that's just what his life did. My brothers and I grew up a long time ago, back in a time when certain places in our country had unfair laws that said it was right to keep black people separate because of our skin that was darker because of our ancestors who had been captured in far-off Africa and brought to America as slaves. Atlanta, Georgia, the city in which we were growing up, had those laws. Because of those laws, my family rarely went to the picture shows, that's the movies, or visited Grant Park with its famous cyclorama. In fact, to this very day, I don't recall ever seeing my father on a streetcar because of those same laws. The indignity that went with them, Daddy preferred keeping ML and AD and me close to home, and there we could be protected. We lived in a neighborhood in Atlanta that's called Sweet Auburn. It was named for Auburn Avenue, the street that ran in front of our house. On our side of the street stood two-story frame houses, similar to the one we lived in. Across it crouched a line of one-story row houses and a store owned by a white family. Look at all those houses. Anybody ever been to Atlanta, Georgia? I have. It's a great city. When we were young, all the children along Auburn Avenue played together, even the two boys whose parents owned the store. And since our house was a favorite gathering place, those boys played with us in our backyard. Can you see that? You see all the kids playing? You have kids who are white, kids who are black, all playing with each other. There was a time when you couldn't do that. They played in the backyard and they ran with ML and AD to the firehouse on the corner where they watched the engines and the firemen. They thought, man, how could we not play with each other? All those kids were different, but because they were white and some were black, it never entered into their mind that they shouldn't play with each other. Well, one day, ML and AD went to get their playmates from across the street just as they had done 100 times before, but they came home alone. The boys had told my brothers that they couldn't play together anymore because AD and ML were Negroes. And that was it. Shortly afterwards, the family sold the store and they moved away. We never saw or heard from them again. Looking back, I realized that it was only a matter of time before the generations of cruelty and injustice that Daddy and Mother Dear and Mama and Aunt Ida had been shielding us from finally broke through. But back then, it was a crushing blow that seemed to come out of nowhere. Can you imagine if someone said hey, you can't play with those friends anymore? That's what happened to ML and AD. Why do white people treat colored people so mean? ML asked Mother Dear afterwards. And with me and ML standing in front of her, trying our best to understand, Mother Dear gave the reason behind it all. Her words explained the streetcars our family avoided, and there was a whites only sign. that kept us from the elevator at the city. Her words told why there were parks and museums that black people could not visit, and why some restaurants refused to serve us, and why some hotels would not give us rooms, and why theaters would only allow us to watch their movie shows from the balcony. But her words also gave us hope that it wouldn't last all the way like that. She answered simply, because they just don't understand that everyone is the same, but someday it will be better. And my brother ML looked up into his mother's face and said the words I remember to this day. He said, "Mother, one day I'm going to turn this world upside down." Can you imagine that? Dealing with something so difficult and saying, you know what? It can be better. In the coming years, there would be other reminders of the cruel system called segregation that sought to keep black people down. It was Daddy who showed ML and AD and me how to speak out against hatred and bigotry and stand up for what's right. Daddy was the minister of Ebenezer Baptist Church. And after losing our playmates, when ML and AD and I heard our father speak from his pulpit, his words held new meaning. Look at him at church. Somebody's preaching. Preach on, preacher. And Daddy practiced what he preached. He always stood up for himself when confronted with hatred and bigotry. And each day he shared his encounters at the dinner table. When a shoe salesman told Daddy and ML that he didn't serve them and would only serve them if they came to the back of the store because they were black, Daddy took ML somewhere else to buy new shoes. After another time, a police officer pulled Daddy over and called him boy. Daddy pointed to ML sitting next to him in the car and said, "This is a boy. I am a man. And until you call me one, I will not listen to you." These stories were nourishing as the food that was set before us. Years would pass, and many new lessons would be learned. There would be numerous speeches and marches and prizes, but my brother never forgot the example of our father, of the promise he made to our mother on the day his friends turned him away. There's Martin marching. And when he was much, much older, my brother ML dreamed a dream. That's from his speech on Washington. The I Have a Dream speech. And he turned the world upside down. Isn't that something? Back in the day when these kids couldn't play together. And that's the end of the story. My Brother Martin by Christine Ferris. What stuck out to you in this story? Was it the relationship that Christine had with her younger brother, Martin? Was it the tricks that they would play on the piano teacher or people who were passing by their house? Is it something that stuck out about how there was a time when they did play together, but that time didn't last long because other people had made laws for them to be separate and segregated? But because of the hard work of people like Martin Luther King and many, many others, that day has gone. We can go to school, we can play, we can work right next to people who are different from us in their skin color. And we can find that we have more in common than we do apart. So what stuck out to you in today's reading? Hey, I hope you enjoyed my story today, and I can't wait to see you. God bless you.